Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Unplugged Woodworkings podcast. So I haven't been up to anything, unfortunately. It's actually quite ironic that I've stopped making furniture for other people. Basically I used to make furniture like to order, basically, and sell it. And I've kind of just stopped that because it's taken up a lot of my time. Yeah, and there's like a lot of stuff I want to do to my own house, build my own furniture, because I've been in this house for like 3 years, and it's and I'm still a lot of furniture missing. So that was one of the reasons. Ironically, other things are taking me time up, so I'm kind of not getting to do what I want to do at the moment. This should only be momentarily. I think maybe March onwards, I should be really good and I should be full steam ahead with a lot of the projects that I want to do. I did nearly purchase some cedar of Lebanon. There was this beautiful big slab, and this was from Elephant Timber Supplies. That's an English firm. I believe they're somewhere down south, and the guy messaged us back, and he did say he had some ties in Washington, which is the northeast of England, in Tyne very rudely, I've never got back to the guy, so I am going to have to get back to him. The slabs are probably gone now, but he did have all the interesting stuff there, so I'm possibly going to see him, or rather get in contact with him and get some slabs delivered. Definitely going to do one of my tables. Going to do my dining table or a kitchen island. I'm still undecided about that. But I think I'm definitely going to use some slabs to do whatever I'm going to do out there. So it's going to be one of them. Okay, so what impressed me this week? I was flicking through Instagram, and this was just today, which, by the way, is a Sunday. I was supposed to record this podcast on Friday, then it moved to Saturday. I had a terrible migraine on Saturday, so I'm recording it today, Sunday, so it should be out for Monday. So anyway, flicking through Instagram, and on my feed there was Robin Gates woodwork, and he was using walking sticks as holdfasts. So, the old wooden walking sticks, you don't really see a lot of them about now, or at least I don't. Not sure in the northeast of England, it's very rare to see them now. But when I was younger, when I was a child, or even going through my teens, they were quite common. I believe Robin said they were chestnut. I want to say chestnut. I could be wrong there, but he says they were working out there quite well. There's plenty of giving them. So there should be no worry of them breaking. Obviously, these have been steam bent into place, and the one continuous grain. So obviously, this is what you want. So there's there's really less chance of it breaking. It's nothing. It's nothing kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? It's nothing extraordinary, shall we say? But the idea is brilliant, or at least I thought the idea was brilliant. I believe Robin said he got these on his post. He wrote he got them out of a charity shop, I believe. They were like £1 each. So I think it was a good buy. They probably would have lay there forevermore. I think that might be another thing why people aren't using them as well, because I think there's a lot of mobility scooters and whatever else, as technology advances, there's weird and wonderful things for people to get about. So, at least they've kind of got a new lease of life. But I thought it was interesting, there might be some people might have some lying around the house and you might want to use them. So just an idea. It would actually be interesting. I did actually think about this when I was writing my notes for this podcast, and I did find it, or at least I thought it would be interesting to actually try and steam bend some myself. So might be a possible video of that, possibly. I'll kind of see what happens with that, because it's quite a severe bend. I haven't done a great deal of steam bending. I have done some steam bending, so I would maybe have to do some experiments, some research, so on and so forth. That'd be pretty interesting, so might be a future video, as I've said. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about workbench design, or at least my opinions. So as always, take this with a pinch of salt. These are only my own ideas, my own thoughts, my own opinions. So I was originally going to do a tall workbench and a low workbench. I was going to kind of roll it all into one, but I feel I'll be skipping around a bit too much, losing track, because obviously I have got notes, but a lot of this, I just start, on the fly, if you will, although I have got notes and that, sometimes I do go on tangents. So I thought it was going to be a better idea to do a part 1 and a part 2. So the part 1, which is going to be today, I'm actually going to do on the low workbench, or in my case the Roman workbench, and next week I'm actually going to publish one on a tall bench, my thoughts on those and what I would personally do. So that's kind of going to be next week. So to kick it off with, I wanted to discuss materials. So to date, I've used three species? I've used 3 species of wood to date for the Roman workbench, or at least the Roman workbenches I've built. So I've used spruce, I've used sapel or sapelli, however you want to pronounce that, and I've used oak. So my favourite out of the 3 is oak so far. I do actually want to use something a bit more hard wearing. I mean, don't get us wrong, oak is pretty hard wearing. It's seen a lot of abuse, that my oak bench, as have all of them. All of them get used. I do kind of, at the moment, or at least when I'm woodworking, when I'm getting out in the garden, I do kind of mingle between 2 benches, and that's a sapel or sapelli and the oak bench. So the spruce bench, at the time it was a good idea, or at least I thought it was a good idea at the time. I was doing it for like cheapness. I was basically trying to get a Roman workbench as cheap as possible to try and make it accessible for people who they mightn't had the money to go out and buy a hardwood. So that was kind of why I did it. But obviously I didn't give it a lot of thought. I just kind of cracked on with it and basically just made it and seen how it turned out, basically. So even as I was making it, I knew it was too late. So this is something to bear in mind. Obviously, the weight of it, the weight of the material you're using. So the spruce was far too light. I did use sapel or sapelli legs, but it was still too light. I mean, another thing with the spruce, so this was like construction grade timber. These were 9x2s. Basically, I took the two chamfered edges off one thickness side. I think I planed them down and then I glued them together, and that was it. So, as everyone knows, or at least anyone who's what's the word I'm looking for here, who basically uses construction grade timber or spruce or anything like that, or pine, they'll know it's notorious for cutting, twisting, just warping in general. So the bench itself developed a really bad twist in it, and it was just far too much for us to take out with a plane, to basically square it off. I could have, but I just think it would have been too much, and it would have. I just don't think that the top would have been, able to take the stress of the forces. Obviously, the thinner you make the piece of material, the easier it's going to be to split and break. So I would kind of stay away from spruce or pine, any kind of thing like that. I mean, I'm not saying all softwoods are bad. There is some softwoods you could use, but I mean, me personally, I would go more for the hardwood. I would definitely say like ash is going to be a good one. It's going to be nice, sturdy, heavy, and beech, and obviously oak. So the Sapel is pretty good. I did get a comment not so long ago, maybe a week or two ago, and the Sapel does actually hold up really well. The only issue I've had with it is that when I'm using the notch, I've actually split the wood, and this has happened in two benches. So the thickness of the top of the bench is around 2 inches, just shy of 2 inches, I believe. So, as I said, I have had issues with that. On the bench, it's just happened to. Obviously, it's a Sapel bench. The notches are approximately 14 inches away from the end of the bench. So, if you're all going to use Sapel, I would advise you to move your notch further back. Maybe somewhere like kind of 20 inches, something like that. That should take care of it. But I was really surprised when it split, because like it's 14 inches from the edge, So, but again, it just goes to show you the power of wedges, really. Because there's a lot of force. You can get a lot of force with wedges. I think people underestimate the power of the wedge, the peg and wedge system. So, and obviously the notch. Okay, so sizes next. I'm gonna go with the main one, the one I've probably had the most questions about, and that's the height. So this is my recommendation. The height should be somewhere at the back of the knees for a person, and I'm sure I've done a couple of paragraphs about the height in my ebook, which is free for anyone that hasn't got it and wants to get it. There is numerous links kicking about. It's, as I said, it's free. Just kind of download it. You don't have to sign up. There's no email sign up or anything like that, so you can get it, and it has got plans for anyone that doesn't know. So, as I said, the height should be at the back of the knees. If you think the back of the knees is going to be too short for you, have it slightly higher. But I personally think if it's slightly higher, it is going to hurt the back of your legs over time. So I personally think it's better kind of in line with the crease of the back of your knee. That's what I go for now, and that's very comfortable for me. It's a nice height for us to get my knee on, if I need to kneel on it or anything like that. So the width So me Sapel bench or me Sapelli benches, because I think I've got about four. Is it four of them there now? I can't even remember now. Is it one, two, three, four? Yeah. So I've got four Sapel benches there, and they're all around 15, 16 inches. And for me, I like that. I like that width. That's just kind of nice for me. I mean, it really depends on the work you're going to be carrying out, and also it depends on your height, I think, as well, and maybe your flexibility. I'm quite flexible, so when I'm sitting on the bench, it's quite comfortable for me. But someone that's not as flexible, they might have issues, with the hips or whatever. They might not be able to open the legs as much when they're sitting over the bench, so that possibly could be an issue. But if you were a tall guy or a tall woman, you might be able to, you might feel, more like, not more relaxed, but you might be just as relaxed. Say if it was maybe, I don't know, maybe argument's sake, 17 inches, that might suit you a little bit better because obviously you've got longer legs. So you've kind of, when you're making it, it's a good idea to do it to make the bench around your what's the word I'm looking for? Your physique, if you like. Obviously building one for myself, 5'5", is going to be no good for a guy at 6'6". I think a lot of people kind of overlook things like this. I mean, in the past, going back a lot of years now, I've seen like videos on YouTube, and people like giving recommendations for heights of workbenches. So the heights for the workbenches, these were mainly for tall workbenches, where you'll be standing up. But you can't really give a recommend, or at least you can't give a height recommendation. You can give some recommendations, obviously. Someone might say, right, have it at your hip, or have it at your just above your hip, or wherever. You get where I'm going with this. But you can't turn around and you can't say, right, have it at 36 inches or have it at 50 inches, because obviously everybody's different. So, I thought that was a bit of a bad advice. I can't quite remember who said it. I do remember there being, several people actually saying it, but obviously I'll reiterate it again, build it for your size. So, length. Me next Roman workbench. Yes, there is going to be another Roman workbench. I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished with them yet. So I think my next one, I'm probably going to go somewhere in the region of 7 foot, probably. The reason for that, do I really need 7 foot? No, I don't need 7 foot. But what I often find myself doing is using like a quarter of the bench for like me tools to put me tools on. I might be using multiple tools at the same time, or, going backwards and forwards between tasks. So I think the longer, or at least 7 foot, would be a lot better for me. It's not essential, but I think that would be really good. Also, what I think is better, like to have the bench longer for, is that you can have like a couple of things set up. So you could, at one end of the bench, you could have it kind of set up for planing, or you could have it set up, for the wedge and peg system to be holding something, and you could be cross-cutting sections. You might have the notch accessory into the notch and further down the bench. You could even have the it's deluding. It's deluding us. It's escaping me mind. What? The shave hose attachment. I couldn't think of it there. So you might have the shave hose attachment like kind of set up on the bench. So if you've got a 7 foot bench, it's going to allow you to do a lot of things at once. I mean, and as I said, you mightn't be able to think of anything where you would need like 3 setups, but I've done it and I do it. It's not uncommon for me to like try and have something set up like that. It really depends. I mean, like sometimes I'll have 2 benches out, because obviously I've got multiple benches there, low workbenches. So it is common for me to have the 2 benches out as well. So if I've got something at 7 foot, there's no need for us to have 2 benches out. And also, I do actually plan on travelling sometime soon. Hopefully, the world sorts itself out with current affairs. So I do actually want to do some travelling, and obviously, I will be taking my room and workbench with us. I'm going to put it in the back of the van. So I'm not going to really have the room for like 2 workbenches. One's going to be hard enough. So I definitely think 7 foot's going to be good, but again, that's going to be good for me. I think me oak bench is somewhere around 6 foot. I think my Sapel one, the last Sapel one I've done, that was 5 foot. I have done one at 4 foot as well. So I will say the only issue is obviously the shorter you get with these benches, the less they're going to weigh. So the weight can become an issue. If it's too light, it's going to move around all over the place. I mean, you can use mats. Mats do help. And obviously, if you're using it on grass. So anyone that follows us on Instagram or watches any of my YouTube videos knows, like, I do most of my stuff on grass. So when I use it on grass, the bench doesn't move around a great deal. So that's something to bear in mind. If you plan on using this like in a workshop, you might have to use mats, or you might have to use some sort of a stopper that you've maybe screwed into the floor, something like that. So that's just something to take into consideration, unless you make the top like super thick, and obviously that's going to give you some extra weight. Legs. So, legs. I think most of the legs that I've like made for the benches I've made are usually somewhere in the region of like 2x2. That's 2 inch by 2 inch. Although I think the oak one might be slightly bigger. I can't quite remember the sizes off the top of my head. So when you're making the legs, you could have them a bit more chunkier if you chose to. This could be solely to add some extra weight. I think the chunkier ones kind of would be a little bit better. I'm not talking about major chunky. I'm just on about a little bit more than 2 inches, maybe 2.5 by 2.5, or maybe 3 by 3 pushing it. I don't really think you need to go any more than that. So something else what I experimented with the legs was the number of legs. So I've only done 4 legs and 3 legs. I never actually done 8 legs. So for anyone that's maybe a bit of a Roman workbench enthusiast, you've probably seen Chris Schwartz's 8-legged Roman workbench, and it's pretty cool. When I first seen it, I thought to myself, what's the point in 8 legs? But I do kind of see the relevance in it now. I don't know if I'll ever go for the 8 legs because I don't really have the need for it. Although it would be a good exercise to do it, and it would be pretty cool to mess around with and see how it, just how it behaves and what else I'm like able to do with it. For anyone that uses a Roman workbench, you'll obviously know when you're doing stuff, or at least when I'm doing stuff, I'll actually put me feet up against legs. I'll wrap me legs around the legs. You start to use all weird and wonderful like gripping techniques with your feet and your ankles and your legs and whatever else. So that would be pretty interesting. To have a mess around with it. I'm not going to say I'm never going to do it, but I have to admit that I've never built it with the 8. So obviously the 4 legs, I can't really go much into 4 legs because it kind of is what it is, isn't it? It's 4 legs. So that leaves us with 3 legs. So I did actually build one bench with 3 legs. I've still got the bench with 3 legs. The thing with 3 legs is that because there's only 3 legs, it's very stable, or at least it's very, very stable down the centre of the bench. It kind of levels itself with there only being 3 legs. So the downfall to this was that when I made the top of the bench was 15 inches wide. So when you're at the end where there's only 1 leg and you kneel on the very edge of the bench will tip. It tips. I don't know if I could say it easy. Obviously, because I'm putting like quite a lot of weight on it, so it does tip. It's obviously, my weight is enough to tip it, but I can't really say it's super easy to tip. But I do personally think that if you were to reduce the width and reduce the length a little bit, because I think the length of this one was about 5 foot-ish or 4.5 foot, something like that. So not necessarily the length, maybe just the width. I think if you reduce the width a little bit, I think that would, it might. It's obviously not going to solve the problem of it tipping, but I think it would reduce it from tipping as much. It wouldn't be as likely to tip, if that makes sense what I'm saying. I also think this kind of would be good as like maybe if you got some like 9b2 or some 12b2, something like that. I think you could find some good use for it there, but it kind of depends what you're going to do. Like the work, I mean, like, it depends what type of work you're doing. If you're only doing bits of planing or maybe some saw, and you kind of might get away with something like that. I think it would be worth experimenting more. Like I say, I do like the the stability of the 3 legs, other than when you kneel on it. But obviously, with the width being brought in, I do honestly think it's going to eliminate it a little bit. So with the legs, there's obviously joints. So to date, what I've tried is I've tried round tenons and I've tried conical tenons. So for me, conical tenons is probably the better one. The reason for this is that I have done several with just the round tenons, and they have come loose a little bit, meaning it's not a great deal or a great issue. It just basically means they've got to be re-wedged. It's, as I said, it's not a big issue. But whereas the conical tenons, I haven't had an issue with any of them. They're all like, they've they're all still tight in me Roman workbench. Me oak bench. Same as the last Sapel one I done weren't an issue. I did have a bit of an issue on the very first workbench I ever done, and that was because the male and the female portion weren't a good match, meaning that when I done the hole, I used a Veritas reamer, but when I done the conical tenon section, the male portion of it, I basically just used just a spoke shave. Like I used a drawer knife, to get the bulk of it off, and then I finished up with a drawer knife. I mean, now I own like is it two? I think I own two like Veritas conical tenon what are they called? Cutters, yeah. Kind of cutters that look like a big pencil sharpener type of thing, but I own two of them now, so obviously I've got the reamer that matches the angle, so they're quite a good fit. So that's probably why they don't come loose. Having said that though, with some of the some of the round tenons, I think I have done a good job with a few of them. They were decent fits, and obviously they were well wedged. Obviously, like thicker glue. Well, not thicker glue, but there was a fair amount of glue on, as much as I like to put on anyway. But they've come loose, so I personally think if you're going to do it, kind of use a conical tenon. So there's also square tenons as well. I've never used a square tenon in a bench build. The reason being, I think it's just too much faff on, and takes too long basically. For me, it does anyway, because obviously you've got to take the time. You've got to cut the square out in the tenon portion, and then you're going to cut the square out in the mortise section. So, me personally, I would just drill a hole, ream it, use a drawer knife, spoke shave, and then finish up with the tenon cutter or a mixture of those. And I think I've done quite a few conical tenons now, so I'm obviously not a master at doing them, but obviously it's the same with anything. The more practice you get, the quicker you get to doing things. So me personally, going ahead with things like that, I would really be doing, or what I am going to be doing, conical tenons. Anything like that in the future, I will be using conical tenons, and I would advise anyone to do the conical tenons. So another thing to take into consideration for the legs is, are you going to be leaving the bench up, meaning is it going to be fixed? You don't need to put the bench like down or out of the way, or are you wanting to take the legs away and store the top somewhere, so it goes maybe up against the wall nice and flush, because I'm going to be doing something like that when I start travelling with my van. By the way, I've still got to purchase this van, but I'm going to have something like that, like where I'm able to take the legs off. So I have actually done this in the past, and I still actually own the bench that I've done it to. And it's just basically conical tenons, and you just don't glue them. Obviously you've got to make sure they're a good fit. So what I found was one of the main issues of this is that when I actually made the conical tenons for these legs, I actually cut a shoulder. So this was just a rough square shoulder, and then I made the conical tenons. So the last time I had this up, and I had all the legs, basically into the holes. And when you're taking it apart and you're putting it back together, you've obviously got to hit the holes. Sorry, not the holes. You've got to hit the leg into the conical mortise. So every time you do this, you're kind of compressing the timber. And obviously, this depends on how frequent you use it, what the moisture content of the air is, so on and so forth. So, because I used it quite regularly, what I found when I was hammering the legs in, it was compressing more and more and more, and it got to the point where the shoulders were actually hitting the underneath of the bench, and then they kind of were working their way loose because they couldn't go in any further. Another issue that I had, obviously, the more I was hitting them in, it was starting to slightly, like a very slight split. I mean, it wasn't like anything to like majorly, like, kind of worry about, but at the same time, left unchecked, I think it would be a problem in the future. So possibly Sapel wouldn't be a great idea if you were going to make a knockdown bench where you were going to take the legs away from it after use, and obviously put them in the next year or whenever the next time you use it. So this kind of goes back to when I was having the issue with the notch. So you can't really I mean, with a notch you can move the notch further towards the middle of the bench, and you're probably going to solve the problem like by doing that. But where the legs are concerned, you can't really move the legs a great deal. You can kind of bring them more towards the centre, but when you bring them more towards the centre of the bench, you start to lose that stability. And also, if you bring the legs like from the edge of the bench further towards the middle of the bench, you're also you can only take them so far, because obviously if you kneel on the edge of that bench, if you take them back too far, you're just going to create a pivot point. So there is your limitations with that. So I think probably if it's going to be a knockdown bench, you're probably going to be better off using something like oak or ash. I think, to be honest, I think ash would be a lot better suited for something like that. I'm not overly sure how oak would kind of hold up, because oak does split quite well. So I really don't know how oak would behave. I might have to try it out. It just depends what I can get my hands on at the time. I shouldn't have an issue with getting some ash when I go to do it, but never say never. So notch position and dog holes. So I have kind of touched on the notch position a little bit. Me personally, with where I place it, on the Sapel bench, that was the last bench I built. That's actually on the, if you can imagine the bench, so the front of the bench, and I'm on the left hand side, and that would be the way I would play in, because I'm right-handed. Sorry, I was going to say left-handed there, because I'm right-handed. So that would be my side, what I would be on. So on this bench, I've actually got it on the opposite side, which would be the right-hand side if I'm facing the front, or what I class as the front. So I think that's quite a good position where it is. So obviously, I've stated about being back 14 inches. And having a little bit of issue with like splitting with a wedge. So I personally think if you're going to be using like ash or oak, it's kind of not going to be an issue. But I think like anywhere from 14 to 16 inches is a good area to have it. Um, you could even bring it maybe to the somewhere to the centre of the bench. I think that would be good, like a good place. But again, it kind of depends what you're doing. Like going back to having like having a bench at 7 foot and being able to do multiple tasks on the bench, like having it set up to do multiple things, that's got to be taken like into consideration. So it goes back to again, it's like what are you building the bench for? What sort of work do you do? I mean, like, there's been people that's built benches and have sent us pictures. Some people have tagged us in benches. And there has been a handful of people that have literally built it for themselves. I mean, a good example of this would be the Unplugged woodworker, Ron. I forget the guy's second name. Ron. I forget now. Anyway, Ron. He basically built himself a low bench and he made it his bench. He made himself like a bunch of accessories and he kind of made it for him. It was for his work. Go and check Ron out. It's the Unplugged woodworker. Check his benches out, check his work out. He does a lot of carving work. I believe is it 17th century. Correct us if I'm wrong. Anyone that follows Ron, or Ron, if you're listening, correct us if I'm wrong. I do apologise. But as I said, he built it for himself, and that's one of the things it's probably the first thing you really need to take into consideration, kind of what you're building the bench for, what you intend on doing on that bench, and that could totally change the way the bench works, how it looks and everything compared to how the benches I use look. So, like dog holes as well. This is kind of another one. It really really depends what you're kind of using the bench for, how you want to use it. It's the material you're using as well. I did actually do a video on this. I mean, go and check my YouTube channel out. I forget what the video is called now. I think it's called something like recommendations for room and workbench dog holes. It's something along those lines, and I do go over things on that. I mean, what I always advise, if you're going to be putting like dog holes in, whether it's a tall bench or a room and workbench, kind of put them in as you need them. I think sometimes, like for instance, if you constantly use, which I do, thickness of around about 22 millimeters, I'm actually at the point now where I've made my centre dog holes where I don't even have to use a wedge, because them 22 millimeter thickness boards that I use on a regular basis, it's so regular that I use them, that it just made sense for me to actually put the holes where I've got them, and just flex the board into place and put the third peg in, and I don't actually need to use a wedge. So you could be doing something like that, but if you're kind of using maybe, let's just say, a 3-inch material, but you don't think you're going to use this 3-inch material ever again, or you've got no plans for it any time in the future, it might not be worth you actually, adding those dog holes in for that, if you're not going to be using it again, or you don't think you're going to be using it again. So, as I said, it's sometimes better for you just to do them as you need them. But like as you work with a room and workbench, you should be able to kind of gather where these holes need to be. You'll do it, or at least this is how I evolved. I was doing task after task after task, or rather the same task again and again and again. And I thought, I really need to put some holes there. I really need to put some holes in. I was saying it and saying it and saying it. I said it enough times to myself that I knew I needed to put a hole there.